Hey everyone, I'm going to share with you some secrets, if you will. Basically, they're FBI techniques and CIA techniques that most, if not all, psychologists, NLPers, personal coaches, and even master level hypnotists have no clue of. And this is called behavioral profiling secrets, right? Because when you think about it, most hypnotists and new coaches are obsessed, absolutely obsessed with scripts, whether it's an induction script or a pattern script. And I'm all for scripts, but they become obsessed with it. So do coaches, like what's the protocol? What are the steps, right? And, use this script, say these magic words and whatever it is. And I think all of those are good. But when you train with law enforcement types and really study what places like the FBI, the CIA, the DIA, all of these interesting places, they do something very different. They don't start with scripts. They don't start with influencing. They start with profiling, reading a person's behavior in the first 30 seconds to 2 minutes of meeting them, right? At the FBI Academy in behavioral analysis and hostage negotiation, things like this, they're trained to look past the words and pay attention to behavioral anomalies, right? Things that are slightly different. That signals stress, and stress signals risk, and it signals deception, right? There's no such thing as a lie detector. There's a stress detector. So I'm going to break down some of these exact psychological and neurological techniques and show you how, if you're an NLP or a hypnotist, a coach, or a performer, you can use it ethically to become scarily good at influence, right? So let's start with a demonstration. Right now, I'm going to profile you. That's right. Right now, through the camera, I'm going to profile you. Notice what happened to you when I said that, right? The way you're breathing might have slightly changed when I said that. Whether you leaned in a little bit when you're like, I said, I'm going to profile you, or you lean back. Whether your eyes locked in on the screen or whether you broke eye contact. These are micro expressions that you may not even be noticing. But if I notice it, I know there's something going on, right? You don't, the FBI big secret, CIA uses it, so do all the intelligence agencies. You don't look for liar behavior. You establish a baseline of their behavior, and then you look for deviations. That's where the magic is. And in most interviews, agents are trained to look for those anomalies. It changes in posture, facial tension, vocal tone, excuse me, timing, and even when a certain topic comes up, not one magical lie cue. I hear that all the time. Arms crossed. It drives you crazy if you're really trained, right? As most hypnotists and coaches, they should be doing the same thing from the time someone walks in. So let's go under the hood, if you will. Let's go under the hood, right? And I'm going to introduce you things. They teach it as called the salience network. We teach it, or I teach it, in Street Smart NLP and hypnosis called the reticular activating system, right? Right. And this is neuroscience says it's a salience network. Think of it as a spotlight of your attention. I like the reticular activating system, right? It's in the interior of your brain, in the cortex, if you will, uh, that help you detect what's important now and what your brain needs right now in the right mode, right? I usually use the analogy, it's pretty simple, is if you ever wanted a new car and you don't know what kind of car you want yet, you're looking at different models and you see, oh, a BMW, whatever, 4 Series. Hmm. You go, I like that. Suddenly, you'll notice that car everywhere you look. Or when you buy a car, suddenly you see that car everywhere, right? That would, because you told your brain, this is important to me, find it. You may not have noticed that, oh, your neighbor 2 doors down, they had that car. You didn't notice it till you paid attention to it. Now, FBI types and CIA types, profilers, negotiators, interrogators use this idea all the time, whether they call it that or not. They present topics, questions, or even evidence. Then watch where your internal spotlight suddenly flares up. Does the person's breathing change? Do their eyes dart more? They start looking around. Does their voice pitch or crack? The spike tells you something to pay attention here, dig in more. And so when I say behavioral profiling, I'm really talking about reading how someone's brain is allocating their attention through their body. You know, someone says that they're totally focused on you, but you notice their feet are pointed away, especially when you're talking to them. Their feet are pointed toward the door, right? They say they're paying attention, but you could tell they're looking over you to the back of the room, right? So let's talk about some what we would call behavioral tells, right? So let's get practical. And I'll give you three the pros use the most. And then I'll show you how to use these in hypnosis, coaching, and persuasion ethically, easily, effortlessly, and naturally. In fact, once you learn it, the more you try to find it, the more you'll find yourself doing it, right? And let's start with eye movements and cognitive load. Forget the myth that if they look left, they're lying. If they look right, they're telling the truth. Up, left, up, right. Yeah, it depends on that, right? This formula is overly simplistic, right? We do know if you look up, you have a tendency to be making pictures. You look side to side, you're making sounds. If you look down, you're either talking to yourself or feeling something. But what we need to be aware of is their eye movements and whether they're under cognitive load, which means they're working harder to fabricate or conceal something, right? They're trying to create an image. So they're making rapid eye movements. They blink more. Number one is blink rate, right? There was a great video that showed Bill Clinton giving a typical talk in a few scenarios, right? And his blink rate was whatever it was, 8 to 10, and which is it's fine whether they were asking questions or not. But then when he's being grilled on the scandal that he was being grilled on, suddenly he started blinking more, right? His blink rate went up, right? Some people say pupil dilation, but it depends. If they have blue eyes, it's easier to spot it in blue-eyed people than dark-eyed people. So let me ask you a question. And do their eyes, if you're talking to somebody, so let me ask you a question about last night. And then their eyes start working overtime. I'm sorry, I taught this, and this lady did it to her son that night. Doesn't prove deception, but it says they're working hard, right? Their brain's working. You might have hit a hot spot, and it's something to dig into, right? And we always talk about the second tell I can show very quickly is incongruence. Of course, it's one of my favorites. Of course, everybody's been around me, whether I'm teaching NLP or hypnosis technique or coaching technique. I would say this is one of my favorites because they are. But this one's easy. Incongruence, which is the words versus how your body moves, right? So they say, I'm fine with that, right? But if they go, yeah, I'm fine with that. And not just their arms crossed, their jaw locks, their voice goes flat. I'm fine with that. Right? That's a micro expression of fear, disgust, even anger. And it might be just very fast, right? These are the incongruencies which should be telling you that something's going on there. Doesn't mean they're lying, doesn't mean they're doing anything, right? It just means something you could dig into. Person I know learned this, and when they were dating someone who hadn't been divorced all that long, and so they started asking, the person would go, tighten jaw, so, no, I'm totally over my ex. But their whole body screams no, and they start leaning away. They don't want to talk about it. Trust the body, right? That's where the real script is running. Not that they're not working on whatever, it just lets you know something's going on, right? And then you want the baseline shift. This is where people at first learn this blow whether it's going to work or not, right? And that is they look for signs of lying without knowing what the person's baseline is, what their normal is, right? If they stand around like this all the time, they just cross their arms. It's just who they are. And then they're talking, and then you ask a question, they go like this. Oh my God, they're lying, or they're closed off. They don't want to, it's just their thing. So you need to get a baseline, right? I watched a video, a person said the hardest thing he had to learn is he got an experienced negotiator, an interrogator, is each time he walked in to talk to somebody, he had to go back to neutral. Okay, I don't know this person. I need to get their body style. Are they loose, bouncy? Do they talk a lot? Is their verbal things. They talk a lot, chatter, clipped, whatever it is, right? Their breathing pattern, right? And then as they dig in, once they think they have a baseline, then you start asking questions or doing things, and you look for the shifts, right? And the other thing you do, tell that most people don't know, is you don't ask questions. You make a statement, and then let the person who was one, it was an investigator, police person talking to somebody, instead of saying, "Where were you last night?" Right? Um, they'd say, "Well, I understand you were somewhere at 8 o'clock last night." Right? You're not asking where were they. You're saying, "I understand you were at this place," right? And they'd usually pick a place that the person wouldn't be at. Well, then the person wants to correct the statement, right? But because when you're asked a question, it lights up, especially if it's a tense situation, it lights up your defense mechanisms, right? So how can we use this for persuasion ethically and easily? Or as someone said, how do I use this without becoming a creepy robot, like an AI tool? Well, great salespeople have always done this unconsciously. There was a video, I don't know if it's true or not, great video though, where someone interviewed like the top couple of car salesmen, I think in California, and just they noticed that they would change their language with the people, right? They would, if the person they're trying to sell the car to was used a lot of visual words, they switched to visual. If it's kinesthetic, they would talk about feelings. If it was this, right, that, right? And they would read people unconsciously. They would watch for when a client leans in and smiles or when they pull back and cross their arms, right? And the one, it was the guy that came up the first that they could track, where if you've ever been buying a car or something, and they would say like, okay, we're getting a deal, da 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 da, sign right there. And they wouldn't slide it all the way across the desk where you could just pick it up. They make you lean in. Why do they make you lean in? Because when you lean in, you're subconsciously expressing interest. When you see something, you go, "Ooh, that's cool," as opposed to lean back, right? And the person, I know a guy, the manager at the Cadillac dealer by us, he says, "Oh yeah, he'll put it on his side of the desk, and he will not." And the person say, "Can you slide it over here?" He'll say, "Excuse me, I'll be right back," and he'll make the person lean in, right? So your reading changes, and you're beginning to influence it like a Jedi mind trick. Lean in, you know. And sometimes if you lean in a little bit, as you're saying, "Here, sign right here," right? And you hand them the pen, even if they just have to reach in to grab the pen, and they can, it's fun, right? And you can use this information on which NLP technique, which coaching technique, which induction to use if you're a hypnotist, how fast to go, how slow to go. You're beginning to read all of this stuff, right? And if you see a tension spike at a certain phrase or something, this is something you need to dig into or something you need to do, right? So how can people like coaches or negotiators or performers use it? Well, mainly you use it on yourself, right? You notice your own baseline shift under pressure, right? And you train your nervous system to go back into a powerful state. I always see these top actors will pull back and do breathing techniques right before they go on, right? Or right before they hear action, before they step on the stage, before they go action, before they start doing whatever it is they're going to do, right? Because you need to train your nervous system, right? So in negotiation or coaching, profiling lets you see whether something's landing, are they resistant, are they overwhelmed? Then you adjust. That's street smart persuasion. So let me give you a deeper level of how the brain works, right? The brain reason why all this works, right? Neuroscience. Number one is the mirror neuron system, right? So what happens if two people are in communication and are close proximity, right? Their brains will begin to synchronize, right? And it's almost like, so if I'm talking to you and we're in close proximity and there's no conflict, and I'm doing something and I go like this as I'm talking, your brain lights up like you're doing it, whether you do it or not. It's also why sometimes you'll see a slight pause before then the person they're talking to will do it. All you have to do is go to a coffee shop and see two people talking. They become a mirror image of each other. We've been teaching this for a long time. Now we know it's actually in your brain. I think they discovered the neuron system in that neuron system in the 1990s, right? And that's why when you sit with a client and truly tune in, you start to feel what they feel, right? Good. I mean, investigators have been doing that forever. It goes all the way back. I think in a Sherlock Holmes movie, he talked about the tapping into that, right? And it's the resonance that's going on, and it makes what you're doing more accurate, right? And then you have your limbic system, right? This is the salience network, right? It'll point out what's threatening or what you find relevant, right? I would call it the reticular activating system. And so, then you see people lean in, you see them notice something, you see them lock in more. And once you understand that, you can guide it, right? That's why great hypnotists, interrogators, performers have this in common. They read the state and then they lead the state, right? And first of all, you have to enter into the state yourself. So if this grabbed your attention, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I teach a full behavioral profiling and deception detection course. It's available on my website at hortonpsychology.com, right? And it basically teaches you how to build a baseline in a couple minutes. It's like getting a three-dimensional, I always say hypnosis training, basic NLP training, gives you like an x-ray into the person you're talking to. It's why it was such a breakthrough. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, breathing patterns, all that cool stuff, anchoring, right? But if you add the behavioral profiling, it's like an MRI. It goes one level deeper. It's like seeing things as they transpire in real time. It's not just an x-ray, it's a live MRI, right? And teaches you nonverbal things to look for. So wherever you're watching this, as always, I hope you subscribe to wherever this is being shown, share it with your friends, and make sure you go back and watch the video, Why Willpower Fails, the Neuroscience of Addiction and How Top Performers Rewire It. And all of this information is something I love sharing. So if you have any questions or you'd like to hear a topic discussed even more, just reach out and I'll talk to you soon.